Welcome to Go Vote Omaha. This is a candidate forum for the State Board of Education District 2 presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Jerry Simon, a League member and moderator for the forum. The League of Women Voters never supports or opposes political parties or candidates. We present this forum solely for voter education. Here's the format for our forum. Each candidate will have a 1-minute opening statement. We'll follow that with questions and answers. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to answer every question. The candidate who answers the question first will have up to 30 seconds of rebuttal time. We'll conclude the forum with 1-minute closing statements. A timekeeper will alert the candidates when they are to stop speaking. Before the forum, the candidates drew lots to determine their initial speaking order, and I'll introduce them to you in that order now. There are 2 candidates running for the State Board of Education in District 2, and they are Lisa Fricke and Glenn Flint. And we'll go right to our opening statements, beginning with Lisa Fricke.
As Jerry said, I'm Lisa Fricke, and I'm running for the Nebraska Board of Education, District 2. I come from a military family. My dad was in the Air Force for almost 30 years, so I was very fortunate to experience some diverse cultures. And I'm married to David Fricke, and we have 3 children. The oldest is Jason, Erica, who's married to Captain Velasquez, and she has 3 little boys. And my youngest is Ryan. I'm running for the State Board of Education because after 36 years, I want to pay back the public schools that gave me such a rewarding career. I believe my 36 years of experience, the knowledge in the classroom, and the things I've learned through training and community experience will make me an effective school board member.
Thank you. Glenn Flint.
I'm Glenn Flint. Governor Dave Heineman appointed me to the State Board of Education back in March of 2014. It's been an interesting time to be on the State Board of Education. The end of No Child Left Behind, the beginning of the Every Student Succeeds Act. We've worked on English language arts standards, mathematics standards, and the new accountability system for Nebraska, AQuest. I'd like to continue. I've been working on competency-based education, which is an idea to let the students move ahead at their own pace rather than the traditional factory assembly line model. I'm very concerned about dyslexia. 1 in 5 students has that to some degree, and I think that impacts our reading scores. And I'm also interested in option enrollment. I'd like to shift the balance more toward the students and parents rather than toward the system so much. So I'd appreciate your vote in November, and thank you so much for watching.
Thank you. We'll start with our first question. What will you do to protect the academic freedom of students and teachers? And we'll start with Glenn Flint.
Well, I think a lot of the things that we're doing at the State Board may impede that. The standards, they're working on more scripted things which are taking away some of their spontaneity. And so I'd like to see different learning models where the students can interact with the teachers more one-on-one and have more playtime. In Finland, they have a lot of playtime rather than so much structure. And that's one of my concerns, that perhaps we've gone overboard on the standards.
Thank you. Lisa Fricke.
I'm really glad that we no longer have No Child Left Behind, because I believe some of the things that you're talking about will change with the ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. It gives more freedom to the districts and the schools to create the assessments and different guidelines that I think opens up a variety of things that teachers can do in their own local public school. So I look forward to seeing that come to fruition to the benefit of every local school district in the state of Nebraska.
Thank you. Any rebuttal, Mr. Flint?
Nope.
Okay, we'll go to our next question. Do you support charter schools or vouchers in Nebraska? What kind of oversight and transparency would be needed for such a system? And we'll begin with Lisa Fricke.
We have option enrollment in the state of Nebraska already, where a parent can opt their child into another school that might better fit their child's needs. And so when you talk about charter schools being allowed in Nebraska, my main concern is that it siphons money from the public schools because the money follows the child. Our tax dollars follow that child into the charter schools. And Nebraska public schools take all students. And so I think that when you have a charter school that, to my understanding, doesn't have an elected board, doesn't necessarily have to follow state guidelines that public schools do, that are generally owned by businesses and corporations who, some of them for profit, I'd rather invest in our kids in Nebraska in the public schools and keep them strong for all students.
Thank you. Glenn Flint.
Well, I'm very much a supporter of charter schools. I just finished reading a book, The Founders, and it talked about those that are inventing and reinventing charter schools. And they've had some tremendous success in areas where they've had students with the highest poverty. I think it's worth a try. Nebraska has kind of sat out the initial bumps in the road from the charter school movement, and now there's some chance to kind of set back and look at what's working. And this book reviewed the top 20% of charter schools and how they're working together, how they actually work with the district schools as well. A lot of them are now just public nonprofits, and so they receive money, but they're not operating at a profit. The book addressed many of the concerns about perhaps they are kicking out the worst students so that they can look better. But KIPP, which was one of the schools they looked at, took a look at how are our students doing that get into college, and they found that they weren't doing well. So they changed their program. They worked with colleges where their students were doing better, and they've kind of integrated from 8th grade all the way through college path, so those students most in need could get a good education.
Thank you. Any rebuttal?
I don't know that it's a rebuttal, but I've just been following some of the articles, Education Week, and some education things that I found on the internet. And there are a lot of charter schools who have been found to be fraudulent, have ended up shutting down. I'm sure there are some great ones with very dedicated teachers, but once you open the floodgates into Nebraska, you're not going to be able to cherry pick which ones are coming in or not. And I still believe we need to keep our public schools strong for all students.
Okay, our next question. What kind of strategic planning is needed to ensure schools meet future needs? And what should the State Board of Education do to help schools with such planning? And we'll begin with Glenn Flint.
All right, well, funny you should mention that. The State Board of Education has just gone through a strategic planning process and interviewed stakeholders, teachers, and interest members in the community. And what we came up with were we're moving away from a regulatory oversight role to more of a partnering and trying to break new ground, trying to loosen up the regulations, I say, so that we could move into competency-based education and let students move at their own pace. So I think the Department of Education would like to move into that area where they're helping schools to succeed and as well as teachers.
Thank you. Lisa Fricke.
I would just like to say I like that idea of partnering with the stakeholders for education, because in order for our public schools to stay strong, we need a partnership with students, their families, administrators, communities, in conjunction with the guidelines from the Department of Education and the policies from the State Board of Education. So I think there are a lot of opportunities with the new regulations coming in, not only from the federal level, allowing us to create our own assessments, but like Glenn said, what they're doing at the state board is providing more opportunities for schools and students.
Anything further, Mr. Flint?
Nope, that sounds great.
Thank you. What can the State Board of Education do to assure that students in high poverty neighborhoods have access to the same high quality education as students living in wealthier neighborhoods? And we'll start with Lisa Fricke.
One of the things that I really want to focus on is early childhood education. It's been researched and shown that when students have early childhood education, the literacy, the math concepts, the social behavior. They're so curious and want to learn so much. And if you can guide that curiosity into those skills and prepare them for kindergarten, but you know what? It doesn't just prepare them for kindergarten. When they get that foundation of the literacy and social skills and all of the other thinking that they do when they're read to, when they get a chance to play with others, it builds that foundation that they need when they enter kindergarten. And once they enter kindergarten ready to learn, then they don't fall behind like the kids that don't have that opportunity.
Thank you. Glenn Flint.
Well, I think we can do a lot with competency-based education again. I keep coming back to this idea that right now the traditional school is a factory where we divide everybody by age group and move them down this conveyor belt, spraying them with the same amount of knowledge. Not everybody is getting that, and as they progress through this, their outcomes become worse and worse. So I would like to have more smaller class time, where teachers could work with students individually. I think it's great to have mentors from the community come in and read to children and help them out that way. I'd also like to, again, give charter schools a chance. They're doing some great things in some very high poverty areas, and that would be my recipe.
Thank you. Anything further, Ms. Fricke?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Here's our next question. The State Board of Education spends a lot of its time establishing standards and administrating testing. Should teacher support and curriculum development be a greater concern? And we'll start with Glenn Flint.
I would agree that a lot of the teachers I've talked to are very frustrated that they're caught teaching to this script. A lot of the things that they used to be able to do spontaneously, they can't do that now because it's time to cover this unit. They need to be sticking to their curriculum schedule. So I'm not convinced that the standardized testing and the standards are actually delivering the results we want. There may be too much time teaching to the test, too many tests, and I feel that needs to be reduced. And professional development, the competency-based education subcommittee has launched some professional development opportunities for teachers in schools that are interested in moving in that direction, and it'll be interesting to see what comes of that.
Thank you. Lisa Fricke.
One of the things that the ESSA will bring about is an opportunity for fewer tests. Before No Child Left Behind, there were probably 6 to 7 federal tests that were given. After No Child Left Behind, there were 16 to 17. And that takes away from the authentic learning and teaching. Projects that I did that covered so many things that were engaging the students, giving them critical thinking. With that many tests mandated from on high, a lot of those awesome projects that took the time to, get the learning to sink in and get the students engaged. I think we'll have more opportunities for that with the new federal reauthorization, because the testing will be up to us, the districts and the local school districts. And so it's very important that we get all the stakeholders involved that need to be involved, so that this new program of assessments in Nebraska does not look anything like No Child Left Behind.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Flint?
I would agree with Lisa. ESSA gives us the chance to remake our world, so I think that's huge.
Thank you. Here's our next question. What type of expertise and financial supports are being made available to persistently failing schools? How does the new state accountability system address the needs of these schools? And we'll begin with Lisa Fricke.
From my understanding, with the new Every Child Succeeds Act, the State Board of Education, working in conjunction with the Department of Education, will have an opportunity to not be punitive when working with schools, but find 3 schools that need help or resources and give them a chance to make a plan and then interact with them again, so that all schools are succeeding in Nebraska. So I think that's really important.
Right, right. So under the accountability system, and I think this is part of a bill from the legislature, the State Board of Education is required to pick 3 priority schools from the needs improvement schools. And those schools then receive extra attention. They've got consultants in there helping them do professional development. And we just recently approved action plans, or we will approve action plans to turn those around. I know the schools are Druid Hill Elementary, the Santee Middle School, and Loop County. And each one of those is a kind of a different challenge, and we're hoping to learn from what works there to apply it to similar schools in similar situations.
Thank you. Anything further, Ms. Fricke?
I just think it's really important that schools get the resources they need in order to be successful, and so I'm really glad that the State Department with these 3 schools, it's not, like I said before, it's not punitive. It's more like assistance to get you from where you are to where you need to be successful as a school, but to make the students successful for life.
Thank you. Here's our next question. Why do we have a State Board of Education? It doesn't seem very visible. What's its role and its impact or effect? And we'll start with Glenn Flint.
Well, you know, I wonder why we have a federal Department of Education, because they have no role in this. The State Board of Education existed before the federal Department of Education, and I think what they can do is share resources among teachers. They're kind of a way to build a network and do professional development. That's the role I think they see themselves becoming, setting standards and trying to help out schools that are struggling. Sometimes they need more resources than are available in that local area, a fresh perspective. So I think that the State Board of Education provides some oversight on the Department of Education. I think about the Department of Health and Human Services. As far as I know, they don't have any civilian oversight, and so they may be in there doing their body mass index calculations and announcing those to the whole class, and it looks like it's bad for the Department of Education. We seem to have let them slip in and violate student data privacy and so forth and so on. I think that more state agencies could use some civilian oversight to keep those kind of problems from cropping up.
Thank you. Lisa Fricke.
You know, the mission currently for the Nebraska Department of Education is to raise the level of academic achievement throughout Nebraska through planning, policy making, evaluations, and fiscal responsibility. And that's in order to improve the quality of education access to all students in the state of Nebraska. And so I think they have a huge role when they're doing all of that to make sure that our students are successful and that our schools run smoothly and efficiently and are producing graduates, whether they go on to career education or they go on to college or whether they go into the military. They will be prepared through the guidance of the State Board of Education and the Nebraska Department of Education.
Anything further, Mr. Flint?
No.
Okay, thank you. Here's our next question. Should the State Board of Education set statewide sex education standards within health curriculums? And we'll start with Lisa Fricke.
The curriculum is set through Rule 10 from the Nebraska Department of Education, and each district is, in order to be accredited, is supposed to follow Rule 10. Now, what that health class or PE health class looks like, as long as it's following the guidelines from NDE, it's up to the districts to work out the curriculum that best fits their district, their students, and their community.
Thank you. Glenn Flint.
Right. I don't think we want the Department of Education, Nebraska Department of Education, picking curriculum. And as we've seen recently in Omaha, there's been quite squabble over the curriculum for the comprehensive sex education. I think different areas have different sensibilities, and it makes sense to let the local school boards determine what's going to work better for them. So beyond some general guidelines, I would be hesitant to specify too much detail in that.
Thank you.
curriculum.
Anything
And-
further?
The Rule 10 is the curriculum kind of guideline that you mentioned, and each school district will work with their curriculum and decide how it's going to work. And some parents are prepared to teach their students what they need to know, and some aren't. And the parents have the option, especially in Omaha, to opt their child out of that class. And knowing some of the things that are going on in the world right now that kids need to know to stay safe, I think is very important.
Thank you. Here's our next question. After experiencing some problems with the company to which the Nebraska Department of Education outsourced the state writing assessments,
Oh, boy.
do you think the outsourcing produced better or worse assessments than those developed by Nebraska educators? And we'll begin with Glenn Flint.
Well, I would say that all the tests are developed by Nebraska educators. They gather writing teams together in Lincoln and write the questions. The problem with the tests was with the delivery mechanism, the computers, the networks, and so we've lost 2 or 3 years of writing assessments since we've been starting this. Now we have replaced the 11th grade Nebraska test with an ACT test. And I think that's going to be a huge improvement because that is a stepping stone toward college. It's a test that really matters rather than just another test. And so it will be interesting to see how we do on that. I think Nebraska has one of the highest rates of participation in the ACT already, and we do very well on that test for having such a high participation rate. And I think there's also going to be some test prep that will be available to our impoverished students so that they don't have to pay for that on their own. I think that will help get them ready for that important test as well. So in the balance, I think it was, a reasonable thing to outsource the testing, but we did have technology problems when we tried to match it up with the diverse number of computer installations we have across the state.
Thank you. Lisa Fricke.
It was fun. I had the opportunity to be in on the ground floor creating what the writing assessments would look like. And I loved it when teachers from all over the state congregated, and within a few days we went through all of these assessments. And the training was excellent, so it guided us. And I looked at it as a learning opportunity for me as well, seeing what other schools were doing. And so I think our Nebraska teachers did a great job in creating the assessment. And the people, I believe, that are out of Minnesota, their technology didn't work the way it should have. And so that's why we had that problem, as Glenn stated. As far as the ACT test, I think as a junior, that's a really good choice. It's up to now the State Board of Education to decide how this will look, what the proficiency levels will be, because you not only have college-bound students, you have career students, and you have ESL students, and you have special ed students. And so when they decide what this assessment is going to look like as far as proficiency, which they haven't done yet, they will work on that, I think we need to be very cognizant of the population we have throughout the state of Nebraska so that we do what's right for all kids.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Flint?
Well, I'd like to say, there are so many tests administered right now, and the NISA test is mapped to our standards, but there are other tests that teachers and students like better, and the NEWA MAPS test is one. Mm-hmm. It's adaptive. It helps the students build goals. They see what they need to do to get ahead. I'd like to replace the NISA test with that and just match that up to the standards with some math magics, I guess, that can be done.
And we use the MAPS testing.
Thank you.
And so that's a good choice.
Thank you. Okay, we're done with the question and answer period of our forum, and we'll go to our closing statements, beginning with Lisa Fricke.
Well, I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the station for allowing Glenn and I to come and speak to you tonight. I do believe that my 36 years in the classroom working with diverse students from urban to rural schools would give me an opportunity to be an effective state school board member. And so I would appreciate your vote November 8th for Lisa Fricke for State Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Glenn Flint.
Well, I'd been on the State Board of Education for 2 or 3 months, and my neighbor, a retired principal, leaned over the fence and said, "Glenn, how's that job on the State Board of Education going?" I said, "It's just wonderful. You know, we're working on new English language arts standards. We're working on a new accountability system for the state of Nebraska." And he says, "Oh, that's great. Tell me, where did you go to school?" I said, "Well, Alliance." And he said, "How was that?" I said, "Guess it was okay. I got to college, I got a job, things seemed to be going well." He said, "Okay, tell me, what were the state standards when you were in school?" I said, "Beats me, I don't know." And he said, "What were the state accountability system?" I said, "I haven't got any idea." And he said, "Well, truth be told, in those dark days, there were no state standards and there was no state accountability system. Your teachers taught you what you needed to know, your parents held you accountable for learning it, and that system works." And I've always kept that with me as I've gone forward with my work on the State Board of Education. Parents and teachers are the most important thing.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters would like to thank both of our candidates for participating in this forum. And we'd also like to remind you that we have a couple of upcoming forums. We have on October 14th, that's Thursday at 11:30 in the morning. The forum actually starts at noon. We'll have the 2nd Congressional District candidates in conjunction with the Omaha Press Club, and that will be at the Press Club. It's a luncheon debate, and you can call and make reservations for that forum. Again, that's on Thursday, October 14th. The forum begins at noon and goes from noon to 1 p.m. And the candidates are Brad Ashford and Don Bacon. And we will have one more forum. We're almost to the end of our forum season. We have one more forum, or actually informational show that we'll be doing. We're going to be talking about the Douglas County bond issue that will be on the ballot. So you'll be sure to want to watch that program to get information about that ballot issue. For the League of Women Voters, I'm Jerry Simon, reminding you to inform yourself about the issues and the candidates, and on November 8th, go vote, Omaha.